Hey guys, Michael Hansen here. What you're about to see is a movie about how free speech is dying in Canada. I made this movie because I think Canada is pretty much going down the same route as Europe. It's just Canada is about 10 years behind. I hope you find this message important and you help spread it far and wide. Now, if you can, please donate because I can't make these movies without support from people like you. Because, you know, I'm not mainstream media, I'm not a mainstream director, certainly not Michael Moore. I don't have millions, I don't have anything supporting me, so anything will help. Anyways, enjoy the movie and I hope you like it.
Well, with the wave of Muslim terror spreading across Europe, a new documentary about mass migration is getting international attention.
Terror and mass immigration in Europe. Muslim extremism and radical Islamic gangs, rape and murder, beheadings and shootings. Millions of people living in fear while elected leaders do nothing. What's even more disheartening about the issue is you can't even speak about it without being called a racist.
There is a big taboo in Europe to address any issues regarding the consequences of mass immigration, in particular illegal immigration, because the first thing you're going to be accused of is you're going to be accused of being a racist.
So it's been a month since the release of Killing Europe, and I'm on my way to a screening in Ottawa, Canada. Now, I must say that people have reacted pretty strongly to this movie so far. Check out what they had to say about it on Canadian radio.
The Evan Solomon Show continues.
I've watched part of this film. I gotta be candid with you. I find it gross. I didn't like the film. A lot of the counselors that saw this film said, this is a racist film. Look at the content. It's against the policy. You don't rent spaces to groups that promote discrimination against others.
So as you can hear, there are those who are not too thrilled about my movie screening happening in their city. That is Ottawa, Canada, at least.
Little did he know that there were several groups trying to get the screening shut down. Self-proclaimed human rights lawyer Richard Warming had sent the city council a letter calling the movie hate speech and demanding that the screening be canceled. Metro News journalist Kieran Delamont tweeted that the film says that, quote, Muslims are digging their own graves, end quote.
Specifically, what in the intro stood out to you as hate speech?
I think there was a quote, somebody was quoted saying that Muslims were digging their own graves in Europe. I thought that was a little inflammatory.
That's interesting because I saw that in your article. He's not talking about Muslims.
Is he talking about
the left?
Who's he talking about?
He's talking about the Antifa, the leftist.
He's talking about the left.
I guess that misunderstanding explains why he calls the movie an anti-Islam film in his article.
I guess you kind of misunderstood that one. Anything else?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that was a...
So when you think about it, what you wrote in the article, I looked at it, I'm like, what the heck is he talking about?
Delamont goes on to write in his article that the film's trailer traffics in many of the racist motifs that have gained currency among members of the alt-right, including claims of Islamic rape gangs plaguing European society.
Two things. One, is it now racist to talk about the facts behind the gang rapes going on in Europe? And two, the movie described in this article is not the same movie that I made.
So really symbolic of this whole controversy are the journalists who rushed into print to condemn this movie, and then later, when confronted themselves on film with the question, did you even see the film, had to admit that no, they had not watched the film, but they were willing to rush into print and condemn it categorically without ever even having watched the film themselves.
Did you actually sit down and watch the whole movie?
I haven't sat down and watched the whole movie. I very well made today, though. Yeah.
Have you seen any of it?
No, because it's just all in. I've seen the trailer. It's all in the Vimeo.
This is the height of hypocrisy, and one has to say, is this what journalism has come to?
But I mean, your film is called Killing Europe. Like, you can understand that, playing a film that I think reasonably could be interpreted to have
interpretation. There you go again. It's all about interpretation, but you never watched the movie. Indeed, most people calling this movie hate speech. It doesn't seem like they even bothered to watch the movie, and yet they call it to be banned. I ask myself, What in my movie is so dangerous that it cannot be viewed by the public?
I was almost at the border when I got the phone call. We found out through the media that the screening had been canceled. I couldn't understand why.
CEO of the library, Danielle McDonald, stated that she looked at the policies and procedures, which include the police actually viewing it, the staff viewing it. It passed those tests. But if it did not violate any hate speech laws, why was the screening canceled? Local councilman Tim Tierney explained, there were some other hurdles that were there, and we decided that the best decision was we aren't going to show the movie. We're not about closing out people's views on things, but this one doesn't pass the test.
I think this is a very dangerous step, that a library, like the Ottawa Library, is even admitting that it is imposing some kind of a speech test. One might ask, can we have the questions? Can we have the test? Can we see the test? What's on it?
So I'm on my way to Tim Tierney's office to find out exactly what are these tests that got my movie shut down. So let's see what happens. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Is this Tim Tierney's office?
This is it. Welcome to my broom closet.
What's
Donna, by the way.
Oh, Michael.
Nice to meet you,
Nice to meet you. What's it called? I've been trying to get a hold of Tim for a couple of days now, but he hasn't responded to my emails.
What's that about?
Yeah, I had written Tierney several emails asking about the test.
He mentioned there were like some hurdles and some additional like tests. Well, so the test he's talking about, is that one they can use today, or?
That's what they're trying to do.
Oh, okay. What test is that exactly?
I can't tell you exactly what it is. I don't collaborate with the public library.
So as you just heard, his assistant Donna wouldn't tell me what those tests exactly consisted of. All I know is that they got my movie shut down.
The library banned my movie, but I was curious. What would they actually allow the people to see?
No, I'm not advocating that they ban it, but apparently my movie was deemed too offensive and too dangerous, but Mein Kampf is not too dangerous or too offensive.
Mein Kampf, by the way, in Arabic, is my jihad. It is my struggle, right? So would the Quran be allowed on the shelves of that library, which likewise is full of Jew hatred? Would that be okay? So whenever you begin to allow a government arbiter to impose a speech test of what is permitted speech, what is not permitted speech in a government facility, the citizens are now disenfranchised. The citizens are no longer the ones who decide as free people what they will see, what they will read. And so I think this is a very dangerous step.
Despite the screening of Killing Europe having been officially shut down, Ottawa Against Fascism still decided to protest in front of the Ottawa Public Library just to make sure that everyone understood that this movie was something no Canadian should be able to see ever again.
Let's talk about Ottawa Against Fascism. Do you know who they are?
I sort of know them, I guess, in the capacity of covering them from time to time.
Okay. So I just want to say that I find it a little bit ironic too. There's a lot of irony going on around here. Is that, you know, they call themselves Ottawa Against Fascism. Do you know what the definition of fascism is?
Okay, to voice a definition, it's a state, it's an authoritarian sort of form of governance in which speech, expression, political association, all these things are very tightly controlled. That would be and subject, I guess, to sort of state censorship.
So, do you find the irony of the definition you just gave?
I see where you're going with this. That speech is being controlled.
Exactly. So you know, I want to go talk to Ottawa Against Fascism because they were instrumental in getting my screening shut down. And you know, one of the questions I want to ask them is that, you know, why did they feel that a movie that essentially interviews rape victims and so forth, why did they feel the need to get this thing shut down? Why did they want to dominate, you know, the marketplace of speech and ideas? So I want to engage in this discussion with them. Do how far do you think I'm going to get with that? Do you think I'm going to get a response from them?
Well, I think you've probably experienced it before, but they're not normally willing to talk, and part of the reason for that is that these individuals can't compete with the reality of the situation that they're facing. Their arguments are not really based in a lot of fact, and they're mostly based in a sort of a false sense of victimhood.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? I'm assuming you guys are there to protest these guys? So what is the protest about? No comment? Okay. Excuse me, you guys like to tell me what you're protesting, or? I'm from the United States and trying to get. Okay. No comments, or? No? Are you guys Ottawa against fascism, or? Hold on, there's no reason to get violent. Back up. Guys.
I'm not afraid of you. You fucking bitch. You punched me.
Guys.
Don't punch me again. Don't touch me.
There's no reason to get violent.
We're not violent.
There's no reason to get violent. You punched me. Why did you do that? I didn't do anything. I just asked a question.
Back the fuck up. Back the fuck up, man.
Why are you doing this? I don't get it. I'm just trying to ask a question. Okay? Can we have a little discourse?
Why are you so
guys? Guys!
Hey! Relax! Enough.
Hey! No! Stop it! Jeez, why are they trying to steal my stuff? Oh, they actually gave me a little boo-boo. Anyway, so I just wanted to hear from them, why can't we meet in a public square and have some discourse, some conversation, the marketplace of ideas. But apparently, you don't want to, they don't want to have that discourse. They don't want to engage in debate and discussion. I guess, I'm just going to hypothesize here, but I suppose that if you don't have sound arguments, then you don't want to engage in that political discussion. And I guess then that's when you resort to violence, when you have nothing to say. And it seems like they're not interested in having their ideas put up for scrutiny. Because if their cause is so just, why can't they just have a discussion then?
You know what?
What's your name?
What's your name?
What's your name?
What's your name?
I'm not going to engage, talk about names with a guy who's hiding behind a mask.
What's your name?
What's your name?
What's your name?
This is not really getting anywhere, is it?
My name is Anti-Fa.
Anti-Fa?
My name is Anti-FA.
Okay. My name is Free Speech. Nice to meet you.
Did you write that documentary about Islamophobia or Islamicization of Europe?
Which documentary?
Well, you tell me. Was it the one that they were
the Killing Europe thing?
Yeah.
Yes, that was me.
What bullshit?
Did you see it? Did you see it?
Yeah.
So what in that movie do you think was racist?
Fuck you.
No. It's a legit question.
Fuck off.
No. But guy, if you saw the film, I interviewed rape victims from Rotherham and stuff like that. Is that hate? They were rape victims.
If you bring to light a problem that they don't want to be brought to light, then even though what you say is factual, what you say is hurtful.
I lived in the...
That's the point that they try to make, is that it doesn't matter what the truth is if the truth hurts.
But context is important here, right? Like, is context not...
Yes.
Is it not important to look at the context and say that there's... that these are not ideas that people are unfamiliar with, right? Like the idea of like the rape gang discussion is not an idea that people haven't seen before in some way.
But let me ask you, what's so bad about that discussion?
Because it's almost always used in the popular discourse to then turn around and justify discriminatory policies.
What discriminatory policies? Give me an example.
Things like sort of far stricter refugee controls. Things that, let's see, things like the Muslim ban in the United States.
Hold on. Muslim ban? What are you talking about, Muslim? There wasn't a Muslim ban.
Let's just take a moment to clear something up here. The temporary travel ban that President Trump signed into effect restricted travel from 7 countries that were known terrorist hotbeds. However, the so-called Muslim ban did not include 40 majority Muslim countries. The list also included North Korea, that has a Muslim population of 0. And yet this obvious fact didn't occur to the protesters nor to this journalist.
I was starting to wonder if Kieran de Lamont was just a really bad journalist, or if his journalism was being driven by a political agenda. I got the answer to that question when discussing the communist Antifa.
And certainly you let the extremists in Ottawa dominate the debate, the so-called Ottawa against fascism, because they are extremists, aren't they?
I don't know if I would necessarily call them extremists.
Okay, so you disagree with that statement?
I disagree that they're extremists, yeah.
Okay.
When groups begin selectively to criticize and to try to shut down free speech, they very quickly find themselves in some ironic situations. So take the example of Ottawa Against Fascism, a group that protested this film being shown in Ottawa, and yet on its own website, on the date that it was criticizing and calling for the film to be shut down, Ottawa Against Fascism, at the very same time and on its own website, was commemorating and calling for the commemoration of the October 17 communist, Leninist, Marxist revolution in Russia.
I want to make one point that I've learned through my travels in Europe is that a lot of these so-called anti-fascist groups, a lot of them are really just front groups for communist groups, and sure enough, Workers Unite. I'm going to go on a limb here and say that's probably a communist group, right? Needless to say, communism killed about 120 million people. Well, not for nothing, but communism is a totalitarian ideology. Can we agree on that one?
As it has operated in the world, yeah.
So you don't think that the actual ideology in itself is extreme?
I think the ideology in itself has a long history of being utopian, and I don't necessarily think that you can, I think calling it utopian is a criticism in and of itself, but I don't think that necessarily makes it extreme or totalitarian.
How do you justify having a symbol that killed over 120 million people, including a lot of Jews? What?
That's a false figure, my friend.
That's a false figure?
I'm not a communist, and that's a false
Okay, well, why don't you tell my grandparents who suffered in a gulag?
Oh, I'm sure they died, but 120 million people did not die. Capitalism.
Okay.
How many people are you? How many
You kind of sound almost like a Holocaust denier right now.
I'm not.
Okay, so you think that the people who then took the ideology and interpreted their own way were the extreme ones, not the ideology in itself?
Yeah, that's probably about right.
Okay, so it's all about interpretation, right? So you're saying
that's that's not interpretation. That's implementation.
Okay, so what you're saying is that that communism is not bad. It's the people who try to implement it.
Broadly speaking, yes.
Okay, so you're okay with that symbol here? Does that symbol represent you?
That symbol represents working people.
Working people.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, you know what? National Socialists were for workers too.
No, they weren't. They abandoned that really, really quick.
Oh, really?
Because fascists don't care about working people.
But wait. If you support communism, fascism, you're very much the same.
No, you're not.
You're a collective. You want to erase individual rights. You get what I'm saying?
And yet, that's what this seems to be.
I love individual rights.
You do?
Like the ones that...
But if you support communism, you don't support individual rights. So there you have it. I mean, they're a walking contradiction.
Genocide apologists?
Yeah, they're basically Holocaust deniers, you can say.
Yeah.
Or not Holocaust deniers, but they're Holodomor deniers. So my point is that they're basically deniers of genocide. Again, I keep drawing parallels between them and the Nazis. They have so many things in common. It's not even funny. I didn't know they were basically deniers of massacres and genocide, but apparently they are. So,
at the end of the day, here you have a situation where communist groups want to impose censorship. However, they are not the only ones who want to control the public square and the flow of information.
This is Evan Balgert from the Torontoist. After a private screening in Toronto, I received an email from him asking me to comment on an article he was writing about my movie. I told him that I'd be happy to do an interview via Skype, to which he declined. When the article was printed, it stated, Hansen was provided with questions and an opportunity to comment, and declined to do so. Now, I found it odd that he would write this considering I had offered him a full interview, so I called the editor to get a clarification.
Shouldn't the text actually read that I didn't offer comment, but I had offered to give an actual interview? Shouldn't it actually say that? And then that the writer of the article declined to do that interview. Shouldn't it actually say that then?
I think the version we have there is pretty accurate.
But it's leaving out the fact that he actually declined to do a full-blown interview with me.
Well, you declined to respond to his questions.
Well, I didn't decline. I just said I would do it via Skype.
Right. I mean, the offer to amend the article to include your response to those questions still stands.
Okay. So you don't think it would be in its place to then at least write that I offered to actually give an interview via Skype and the author declined to give me that opportunity?
No, Michael, this conversation is going in circles.
Okay. Can I just ask you one question then?
Sure.
Okay. I mean, do you think that this is ethical reporting then, when you're not including facts like that?
Yes.
You think
you were given a chance to comment, you chose not to respond.
Even though I gave an opportunity to actually interview me, that's me declining to respond.
No, Michael, it's not material. The sentence that we have there is a version that will stay.
Now, if they want to write that I declined to comment and leave out the fact that I had actually offered Evan a full interview, I guess that's their prerogative. However, in the comments section, readers were starting to point out factual inaccuracies in the article, such as the article stating that Paul Weston was the leader of Pegida. When I wrote Simon pointing out these facts, they took down the comments section within minutes of my email.
Wait, just one last comment, and then I promise I'll let you go. Don't you find it ironic that kind of a movie that's about actually the main part of the movie is about free speech and so forth, that you shut down the discussions going on about the movie in your comments section? Isn't that kind of ironic?
I mean, we have a policy and we stick to it for an obvious reason.
If that is the policy, why were the readers then initially allowed to comment? Why was the comment section first closed down when the readers started to point out factual inaccuracies? Simon offered an explanation to this in an email response.
I always lock comments on Evan's articles for obvious reasons. This one went up after I'd left the office yesterday, or there would have been no comments posted.
I mean, we have a policy and we stick to it for an obvious reason.
That you don't want to have discussion about an opinion piece that was put in your paper.
We don't want to have unconstructive comments on the website.
But unconstructive, but one of the guys pointed out some factual inaccuracies in the article. Is that unconstructive?
Right. I mean, I have my contact information up on the website. If he feels there's an inaccuracy, then I can be reached at that email address, and as I have made the same offer to you.
No,
I mean, I haven't heard anything specific, really. All I hear is just general complaining about.
No, because what I'm referring to is that one person correctly said that Paul Weston is identified as the leader of Pegida in that article, which is factually untrue. And a guy wrote that in the comment section. So what you're basically saying is what you're telling me is that pointing out a specific fact like that is unconstructive discussion, and that's why you closed it down. How is that unconstructive?
Sorry, I'm just looking at who the leader of Pegida is. I mean, look, if you have a specific problem, then why don't... Okay.
No. My problem is that you're shutting down a discussion that because you say it's unconstructive. But
Michael, I'm about 30 seconds away from shutting down this discussion.
Why?
I'm just asking a simple question.
So you not only have the communists in the streets of Canada imposing censorship in the public square, now you also have editors imposing censorship in the public square of their articles. If you think that's bad, it gets worse. Let me introduce the Canadian Human Rights Commission.
Give me a second here, bro.
Yeah.
This is stand-up comedian Guy Earle, and in 2007 he was performing in a comedy club in Vancouver when a group of self-proclaimed lesbians started to heckle him.
I'm a stand-up comic. Hey, I can't help myself when I get into a role. These guys said, you're not funny, and I said, well, guess what? You're not lesbian. You're just fat and ugly, and nobody will fuck you.
The comedians' response to their heckling had violated their safe space to the point that one of them filed a complaint to the Canadian Human Rights Commission. However, if Lorna Party is that sensitive, should she be going to a raunchy comedy show, let alone heckling the comic on stage?
Well, exactly. A stand-up comedy show is a different social environment. It's not like going to the grocery store. If you make the choice to go to a stand-up show, you should understand that probably there's going to be some boundaries pushed. That's the whole point of stand-up comedy. We're the pointy edge of free speech,
The Canadian Human Rights Commission didn't see it that way and fined the comedian $15,000 because his jokes allegedly gave Lorna Party post-traumatic stress disorder.
I just wanted to say about the PTSD, there are people that are suffering from PTSD, like soldiers that come back from Afghanistan and this kind of thing. And, it's pretty disrespectful when somebody says they got PTSD from going to a stand-up comedy show when there's people suffering and they can't get their treatment or even recognize guys coming back from war. And
I was prepared to be injured in the line of duty when I joined the military. Nobody forced me to join the military. I was prepared to be killed in action. What I wasn't prepared for, Mr. Prime Minister, is Canada turning its back on me. So which veteran was it that you were talking about?
On a couple of elements you brought up. First of all, why are we still fighting against certain veterans groups in court? Because they are asking for more than we are able to give right now. They are asking for more than we... Well, no, hang on.
However, Trudeau was able to give Omar Khadr, a convicted al-Qaeda terrorist, his freedom and awarded him $10 million. On top of that, the Canadian government rejected an injunction by the widow of the U.S. soldier killed by Omar Khadr. So with that logic prevailing in Canada, it should come as no surprise that something like the Canadian Human Rights Commission exists.
So here we have it. Up on the 8th floor is Canadian Human Rights Commission's offices, and I guess they're quasi-legal court.
So if you are somehow offended or even know someone who might have been offended, all you have to do is go on the Canadian Human Rights Commission's website and file a complaint.
Well, absolutely. When you're taken to the Human Rights Court, as a defendant, you have no legal representation assigned to you. So if you want to defend yourself, you need to engage your own lawyer and pay for all of those expenses yourself.
Getting started. You don't need to pay a fee to file a complaint. You don't need to hire a lawyer or get other legal assistance.
As the complainant, you don't have to pay for anything, win or lose. Even if I won, it just means the complaint is dropped. It doesn't reimburse my legal fees. So it can be quite costly, especially when you end up going into Supreme Court or something. You can get up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
How much was it again that your case has basically cost, even though he didn't charge you?
My lawyer said that the fees would, up to now, would be somewhere around $400,000.
Wow. That's one expensive joke, huh?
Yeah.
But I think everybody in the world who treasures fundamental values like freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, understands the importance of standing up to this sort of cowardly gesture.
No, he is not referring to the Canadian Human Rights Court's jihad on free speech. He is condemning the deadly jihadist attack on Charlie Hebdo. Ironically, though, a few years back, a Canadian Islamist with the same agenda as the Charlie Hebdo attackers filed a complaint against journalist Ezra Levant, who had republished the Danish Muhammad cartoons. Not only did the Canadian Human Rights Commission accept the complaint, but they went ahead and assigned a human rights officer to interrogate Ezra Levant on his decision to republish the controversial cartoons.
My name is Ezra Levant. Before this government interrogation begins, I will make a statement. For a government bureaucrat to call any publisher or anyone else to an investigation to be quizzed about his political or religious expression is a violation of 800 years of common law, a universal declaration of rights, a Bill of Rights, and a Charter of Rights. This commission is applying Saudi values, not Canadian values. It is also deeply procedurally one-sided and unjust. The complainant, in this case a radical Muslim imam who was trained at an officially anti-Semitic university in Saudi Arabia, and who was called for Sharia law to govern Canada, doesn't have to pay a penny. Alberta taxpayers pay for the prosecution of the complaint against the magazine. The victims of the complaints, like the Western Standard, have to pay for their own lawyers from their own pockets. Even if we win, we lose. The process has become the punishment. At this point, I'd like to thank the magazine's many donors who have given their own money to help us fight against the Saudi imam and his enablers in the Alberta government. It is procedurally unfair. Unlike real courts, there is no way to apply for a dismissal of nuisance lawsuits. Common law rules of evidence don't apply. Rules of court don't apply. It is a system that is part Kafka and part Stalin. Even this interrogation today, at which I appear under protest, saw the commission tell me who I could or could not bring with me as my counsel and advisors. I have no faith in this farcical commission, but I do have faith in the justice and good sense of my fellow Albertans and Canadians. I believe that the better they understand this case, the more shocked they will be. I am here under compulsion to answer the commission's questions, but it is not I who am on trial or will be on trial. It is the freedom of all Canadians. You may start your interrogation.
The case dragged on for years and ended up costing Ezra Levant over $100,000 because the Canadian Human Rights Commission, with the court system, were trying to impose the same religious taboos that the Charlie Hebdo attackers were enforcing with AK-47s. While Ezra Levant's trial was ongoing, another case was filed with the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Marc Lebuy filed a complaint for hate propaganda on the internet against a Salafi imam from Montreal for saying the following.
So he says, quote, "Men are superior to women and better than them. In general, men have a more complete intellect and memory than women. Jews spread corruption and chaos on earth. Most Jews seek only material good and money. Apart from that, they are nothing. Homosexuals and lesbians should be, quote, exterminated in this life. Homosexual caught performing sodomy are beheaded." So this guy is writing it. What's very important to say is this is his own book, his own writing, his own commentary.
And the human rights, so in essence, so basically what you're telling me is that you brought this to the attention of the Human Rights Commission and they said no because that's his religion. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
The Canadian Human Rights Commission made the following statement as to why they rejected the complaint. The extracts that identify groups on the basis of prohibited grounds of discrimination, homosexuals, lesbians, Christians, Jews, do not seem to promote hatred or contempt. In other words, according to the CHRC, calling for the execution of homosexuals by a Muslim imam does not promote hatred or contempt. But Guy Earle's lesbian joke somehow does.
It's not a balanced system in any means. They have their mandate and the things that they want to push, and that's what they do. The Human Rights Commission was originally founded decades ago by an amazing Canadian humanitarian, but the focus has been lost. They've lost their way, and it's primarily run by extreme leftists.
So at the end of the day, since your case Has the Canadian Human Rights Commission, to your knowledge, have they ever prosecuted any individuals from the Muslim community for hate speech?
I am not aware of that, no.
There's definitely a double standard going here. The human rights system is not, or I should say, the Human Rights Court is not justice. There's no justice going on there. The history of Canadian human rights tribunals in the last 10 to 15 years has been horrific.
Most of the cases that were presented at hate speech cases that were brought in front of Human Rights Commission were brought up by only one individual, and I think he was the cause of why your documentary was had a bit of difficulty in Ottawa to be presented.
Richard Warman, yes.
How's it going? It's 3-0 for us so far.
This is so-called human rights lawyer Richard Warman together with what we today call Antifa. They are celebrating the defeat of a perceived political opponent through what Richard Warman has termed maximum disruption.
Describe your Nazi fighting tactic as maximum disruption.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that was the title of a presentation that I once gave to an anti-racism conference.
What were you describing? How does Richard Warman fight Nazis?
After years of activism on the far left and several failed runs for office as a candidate for the Green Party, Richard Warman got a job as an investigator at the Canadian Human Rights Commission.
What's interesting is that, up there, Richard Warman would hack onto people's routers so he could use their IP addresses to go on these right-wing sites and what have you not, and bait Canadians into writing speech that was offensive, so he could then in turn file a human rights complaint against them because he was act as a offended private citizen. What do you think of that?
Well, that would raise issues of conflict of interest, and certainly for any such particular cases, he would not be able, under issues of conflict of interest, to be involved, certainly here in America. So if he's actually being involved in those particular cases, that's a serious question. And perhaps more generally, his behavior raises the question of he has indeed weaponized these agendas, and he can just sort of go out and try to engage in kind of seek and destroy missions where he'll try to provoke people into engaging in conversation with him, and then play gotcha with you. And then once someone says something, you'll say, I've got you, and now I'm going to go prosecute you.
So what's interesting is that Richard Warman, as a private citizen, would at nighttime find all these websites where he would find something that would offend him as a private citizen, and then he would file the complaint at the same place he's working, Canadian Human Rights Commission. And then the file or case would be turned over to his colleagues, his fellow investigators, who he would sit next to during the daytime. So they would handle his complaints. Needless to say, Richard Warman's complaints, I think he won 100% of them, and he made a substantial amount of money from these complaints. So is that a conflict of interest? I don't know, but I would say so. Does it surprise you then that Richard Warman won all his cases?
No, not really at all. I guess this is an example of maybe we in America would think of all of the whole FBI and the whole Russia collusion story and McCabe's firing, and it doesn't look to me like the FBI is being particularly impartial here. So it really undermines confidence in the law.
Yeah. I find it kind of ironic that somebody who calls himself a human rights lawyer at the same time has made a career out of persecuting people for voicing their opinion. And the dual irony here is that anybody who dares to write about his crusade against political dissidents, he in turn threatens them with libel lawsuits and even takes them to court.
Indeed, Richard Warman has made thousands of dollars taking journalists, bloggers, and politicians to court for libel. He has even threatened public libraries with defamation lawsuits. Warman went so far as to even threaten to take a high school student to court because the student had written about Warman's lawsuits in a student paper. Warman settled with the student out of court, and the student is now barred from ever talking about the case.
I guess free speech and free press is not really a priority for this so-called human rights lawyer.
Richard Warman is not the only one who wants to control the public square. The Canadian Human Rights Commission has put a gag order on Guy Earle, preventing him from telling his version of the events that led to his prosecution.
Anything that's said that doesn't concur with the tribunal's facts would be perjury, according to the tribunal. So if I were to tell you my version of what happened that night, it does not jibe with the Human Rights Tribunal findings, so that would put me in jeopardy of being charged for perjury.
So basically what you're telling me is that when this movie comes out, you could be charged with perjury?
Fuck them. Fuck them.
All right. I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. Maybe me and you will go hand in hand and be charged for one thing and the other.
Hey, don't laugh, because it wouldn't be the first time that somebody who interviewed me got a summons to the tribunal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well.
As a matter of fact, I had a screening of Killing Europe scheduled in Toronto. A few days before the event, a gentleman named Faisal Kudi had posted on Facebook asking people to attend the screening and testify about the content of the movie and any speeches made at the event, because a lawyer friend is looking into filing a human rights complaint. Now I wonder, who is that lawyer colleague?
I think we can release the hounds now.
The existence of the Human Rights Commission and the grievance industry that has emerged behind it is being justified by the argument that Canadians are inherently racist. Based on this premise, it is therefore not only justified but necessary to suppress free speech. Canadians are constantly being bombarded with headlines and statistics reminding them of their bigotry and readiness to violently oppress defenseless minorities. Indeed, the statistics are alarming, but Prime Minister Trudeau promises to take action against hate crimes.
We need to continue to stay focused on respect, understanding, fighting ignorance and intolerance. That's why we've put forward a number of concrete measures to do just that.
And one of those measures was the passing of Motion M103 targeting supposed Islamophobia.
Now, Canadians don't like the term Islamophobia, but they also don't like the assumptions and logic that underpin Motion M103, namely that we are systemically racist and that we are religious discriminators.
Presented by Liberal House Representative Irga Khalid, Motion M103 calls on the Canadian government to A. Recognize the need to quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear, B. Condemn Islamophobia, and develop a whole-of-government approach to reducing or eliminating systemic racism and religious discrimination, including Islamophobia.
The other fact that Canadians are worried about is that data is being used in a cherry-picked fashion to affirm the fact that Canadians are religious discriminators. The most used fact is the one that comes out of the StatsCan report that says that hate incidents against Muslims has increased 61% over a 2-year period. Now, while it is true that that might be the case, the context is missing.
According to government hate crime statistics in 2016, there were 139 incidents that targeted the Muslim community. Of these, only 35 were classified as physical assaults. There are roughly 1,053,945 Muslims in Canada, so statistically the chances of a Muslim experiencing a violent Islamophobic attack is 1 in 30,112. The odds of getting struck by lightning is 1 in 12,000, which means that a Muslim is 2.5 times more likely to get struck by lightning than to experience a violent Islamophobic attack in Canada. But Islamophobic attacks do happen, and sometimes in the most vicious manner, targeting innocent children.
This morning, me and my brother were walking together to school, and sadly, someone insulted me by cutting my hijab 2 times, and I felt really scared.
I'm just so happy she's safe. But this community is so supportive.
Not only a supportive community, but also a supportive Prime Minister. Before the facts were even in, the media and Trudeau jumped on it, turning it into an international incident.
My heart goes out to the young girl who was attacked, seemingly for her religion. I can't imagine how afraid she must have been. I want her and her family and her friends and community to know that that is not what Canada is, and that is not who Canadians are.
Indeed, that's not who Canadians are, because the incident never happened, and police investigations quickly concluded the whole thing was a hoax. So did Trudeau apologize for spreading a big lie and turning it into an international incident? No, instead he's doubling down on his manipulative messaging.
Unfortunately, we've seen a pattern over the past months of increased hate crimes against religious minorities, particularly against young women of racialized backgrounds. This is something that we need to take very, very, very seriously. And the pattern and the trend lines that we're seeing is something that, as you pointed out, is one of those warning signs around increased intolerance.
We can notice that Trudeau's PMO statement includes no apology and no admission of his responsibility for spreading the hoax. This is an absurd and disturbing response. Justin Trudeau is totally ignoring the real issue, which is that someone or a group of people created a fake incident. Ironically, the real victim in this farcical incident was another minority group, as the girl claimed the assailant in the hijab-cutting incident was Asian. And this false accusation, exploited politically by Trudeau, greatly angered the Asian community, who was at the receiving end of his political virtue signaling.
What's your take on this whole thing, that Trudeau, and why do they have a legit reason to be angry?
Well, I think that that Trudeau and our premier here in Ontario jumped on this because they have an agenda that they want to push forward in terms of their control over people's speech and actions and thought in this province.
Yeah.
And this was an opportune moment for them. They sought to exploit the situation for their own benefit, and then when it turned out it was a hoax, they just kind of got nipped a little bit and just disappeared. They didn't apologize for it or anything, and it basically, now as we see, it seemed to have affected the feelings of the Chinese community sufficiently that they're willing to come all the way down from Toronto to Ottawa to protest about this.
Now, the people the man is yelling at are no other than Ottawa Against Fascism, who decided to show up to counter-protest.
The guys you're protesting are from the Asian community. The reason why they're protesting is because they were wrongfully accused of committing a heinous hate crime. And I agree, nobody should do that, cut somebody's hijab off. I agree with that. But they were wrongfully accused of that. And they were marginalized and demonized. So they're here to protest that. So why are you against that? Why can't they protest that? Don't you think that's a legit grievance? No? Why not?
What's up, Brendan? I'm not going to argue with you.
No, well, I'm not arguing. I just want to hear your point of view. What?
Welcome here. You should go.
Why?
It's not your platform. You should go.
It's not my what?
The platform for hate. It's not welcome.
But you're the ones being hateful.
Oh, are we?
You're the ones being violent. Yeah, maybe.
Ottawa Against Fascism had announced this counter-protest on their Facebook page against what they deemed to be Islamophobia and fascism.
Okay, so these are the people that Antifa called fascists, Nazis, racist, white supremacists, and I just want to make one point here. Well, I don't really need to, but it's pretty obvious the irony here, right? I mean, I guess this rally speaks for itself. I don't even need to explain it. Yeah.
The question is, how is M103 going to affect free speech in Canada? There are those that will argue that the cancellation of the film Killing Europe was a direct result of the overall agenda-pushing M103.
So if people want to cancel my screening, that's on them. Fair enough, I guess. But at least I wanted the chance to go there and then talk about the cancellation. So we had actually booked another event at Ottawa Public Library, and on the poster for the event we put Richard Warman and Tim Tierney amongst others. Now, all of a sudden, there was an issue with this as well. And so I actually went to Tim Tierney's office to talk to Donna, his assistant. And when I showed up, she apparently didn't realize who I was. She thought I was there to complain about this free speech event.
Yes, he's dealing with that today. He's not very happy about it.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, no, he's not happy about that at all. So he's working madly in the downtown office with the people from the Ottawa Public Library, with the CEO.
Oh, okay.
They're working on that.
Oh, okay.
So he's not happy about it.
Yeah, because the word has gone around, and there's quite a few people who are not happy about what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So what's I mean, are they trying to alleviate the situation?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I can't tell you exactly where they are with it now.
As I was standing in the office talking to Donna, the manager of the library, Tony Westerbrook, was going back and forth with the event organizer, wanting more information about the event and assurances that the Q&A wouldn't violate any policies on hate speech, to which the organizer happily guaranteed there would be no such speech.
Now remember, this event is strictly about the cancellation of my movie, not about the subject matter of the movie. So how can they be afraid of hate speech and an event that's strictly about free speech?
What's it called? So they basically said that that you know, since it's not about the movie, it's not about the movie per se, it's about how it got canceled. How are they gonna shut that down then?
I can't tell you. All I can tell you definitively is that every single person who is very high up in the food chain is working on this to do whatever is legally what they're legally capable of doing.
Okay.
They are working on it. Every single one is working on just that today.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people seem pretty upset about
very
this.
much so. We've received lots of emails. We've gotten there's media requests on this.
Yeah.
So I can assure you that Tim is down. He went straight downtown because usually on Fridays he works out in the ward.
Yeah.
Just going around.
Oh, so he's going to City Hall now.
Right down to City Hall.
Oh,
and that's where he's been working.
So,
and I know he's working with the CEO this weekend, but he's working with the second person to command, Dominique Desormeaux.
Okay.
And they've got all the people. I think they've got everybody who can be involved in this.
Yeah.
All of the higher echelon are all working on this right now. This is their exclusive priority.
Their priority today is getting that thing shut down.
They're working on it.
Yeah, because it's like we can't really have somebody talking about free speech at the public library when you think about it. That's a bit offensive, you know what I mean?
But unfortunately,
So at the end of the day, they canceled the event because of administrative reasons. I actually emailed Tony Westerbrook to find out if Tim Tierney had been part in this, that is the cancellation, to which he replied no. So not only did they cancel the event, they lied about it. So I guess the big takeout here is that not only is my movie so dangerous it can't be shown, I can't even talk about its cancellation. I guess that's Canada Post M103 for you.
But they're going to take care of it, right?
on it. They're doing their darndest. They are. Actually, I can promise you that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess I don't have to worry then.
We're
okay.
trying
Thank
very,
you.
very hard.
Have a good day. No problem.
I guess this shouldn't really come as a big surprise. When you have a country that's led by a prime minister who considers free speech to be a bigger danger than returning ISIS fighters, who he calls foreign travelers and enrichment to Canadian society. This is the same prime minister who says that veterans are asking for too much, and yet he gives millions of dollars to convicted Al-Qaeda terrorists. At the end of the day, I guess all I can say is, oh, Canada.